Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
You're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the World Wrestling Federation developed a little bit of an attitude. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
The Undertaker is not scheduled to be here in person tonight, but can you feel his presence?
Joe Giammatteo.
Hello, you yellow slut.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on August 19th, 1996. This Raw was recorded at the Wheeling Civic Center in Wheeling, West Virginia, and features Jim Ross, Kevin Kelly, and Jerry Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then. Let's get into it. First, as a public service announcement, I just want to say fuck you to Peacock. I'm not sure if it was an update to my Roku TV or what, but it was even harder than usual to navigate to our current episode this week.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Peacock, for making your shitty service even shittier.
You know what? They did do something good. I mean, it's still shitty. But I noticed that they added the date to the episode now.
They did. And with their change, they added more categories, but what they left out was pay-per-views. So there's still no way to just click on a category that says pay-per-views and search through it.
That might be WWE because I heard some bullshit that they no longer call them pay-per-views.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
the
call
premium
them whatever
events.
the fuck you want.
Premium live event, Ryan.
But give me a premium live event fucking category then.
You never paid for them anyway. What do you care? To you, they've always been a premium live event.
Yeah, they're just you mean this free event that shows up on my box?
Yeah, I think I would be happy if I just had the option of just searching by show. I tried to do it yesterday whenever I was watching this episode, and you go to Raw and it shows you recent and all-time highlights and Attitude Era highlights. It pushes all this content at you, but it doesn't give you just an organized year-by-year, episode-by-episode list unless you, dive into it looking for it.
Well, how I've been combating their terrible menu is I make sure that I briefly start the next episode so that when I come back, I could just say, continue episode.
Yeah, that's a good pro tip there. Well, as much as I could just go on forever bashing the shit out of Peacock, and I would love to at some point, we need to talk about The Undertaker. Did The Undertaker expire last night in the Boiler Room Brawl? They brawled all over the arena, and just as The Undertaker was about to win, Paul Bearer passed a death sentence on The Undertaker. Welcome to Monday Night Raw, and I am very excited to say that we are introduced at the top to the announce team of Jim Ross, Kevin Kelly, and Jerry Lawler. So good to see this crew here. So good to not have Vince.
I have to ask, was Vince having a surgery or something? Because he doesn't typically miss this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked up and down for that. I didn't find
no explanation.
No.
Well, after we see this fabulous trio of gentlemen here, we go straight into our first match of the night. Owen Hart defeats the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, by countout in 10 minutes in the WWF Intercontinental Championship Tournament quarterfinals. I loved these two heels shaking hands at the start. It was just a touch surreal, but also expected. I thought it was a good way to start things off. I also loved the Bulldog holding the ropes open to let Owen back in the ring after being put out. being nice to each other while being dicks to everybody else is just such a perfect heel touch here. Another thing I loved was Kevin Kelly actually calling moves instead of calling maneuvers. These guys were working great together, which is obviously to be expected, but it was almost like with these guys both being heels and both being stablemates and both being in this tournament, we could almost forget about all of the other hokey shit they get into sometimes, and it just felt like they were having a good old-fashioned wrestling match. But speaking of hokey shit, the screen started to get quote-unquote staticky. And I don't mean like interference staticky. I mean like pumping in the static like they pump in the crowd noise staticky.
Do you feel the presence?
They've been having experiences like that all night, supposedly. I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the future here. I loved the King saying that they were in Wheeling, West Virginia, home of the world's largest family reunion. Popped my ass off for that. I love a good West Virginia incest joke. And just when a good match could have kept being good, we got Sunny coming down to join commentary. Apparently she was out to scout the competition, and she naturally becomes a distraction. Then we get a split screen with Jim Cornette explaining why he's not out with Bulldog and Owen. I loved Kevin Kelly botching the call and calling the sharpshooter a scorpion deathlock.
That was Jim Ross.
That was Jim Ross.
That was Jim Ross, because I have it noted too.
My bad. Apologies,
Yeah.
Kevin Kelly. Well, Jim is so young here, relatively young. He doesn't sound like a, pack-a-day smoker having to deal with AEW like he does now. Well, whenever I made the mistake of thinking that was Kevin Kelly, that's about when this match lost its momentum with me. Some of the stuff at the outside looked a little rough and dangerous. Bulldog looked like his head got bounced off the concrete with that one bump he took. Owen Hart hit an enziguri at the outside, but kind of like fell into the announce table. And somewhere in there, Owen was able to squeak back into the ring so Hebner could call the count out on the Bulldog. The story continues here at ringside, though, as Sunny is yelling at the Bulldog and Owen. Cornette comes out and calls Sunny a slut, and we move on to another segment from there. I don't know what you guys have to say about it, but for me, this was a classic example of a good, solid wrestling match getting derailed by the storytelling going on around it. Joe, please, what did you think of it?
I agree with you. However, I did enjoy the match quite a bit. I was a little surprised, and I don't know why. I mean, we're talking about two Hall of Fame guys here, Owen and British Bulldog. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of distractions, but I don't know. For me, I just blocked it out. The stuff with Sunny, and I'll tell you what, I'm really starting to understand now after listening to Jim Ross podcasts mainly that anything more than a 2-man booth is just a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Whether it's 3 or in this case 4, yeah. It's a mess. It really is, especially when you're calling a quick 10-15 minute at the most match on Raw. It's a mess. And then, we're going to Jim Cornette on a split screen and stuff about Yokozuna. Like, Jim Cornette's talking about Yokozuna. It has nothing to do with this match. It's a lot of confusion. Then this bullshit static. I don't know. Is that The Undertaker or is that maybe Vince McMahon? I don't know.
The ghost of Vince McMahon.
Yeah, has Vince passed away maybe?
Has he expired?
I feel like Vince is there because I like Kevin Kelly. I don't expect him to be, the world's greatest commentator since he hasn't been doing it very long at all. But I feel like Vince was there because a lot of the stuff he was saying was stuff that Vince would say.
Same thing with JR. There was definitely some stuff being pumped into his ear.
And it's funny that you say that because when he said the Scorpion Deathlock, I feel like Vince probably screamed in his ear and he quickly called it the sharpshooter after. But I don't know. I thought the match was fucking awesome. I think when Ahmed Johnson was injured, I think he donated his baby oil to the British Bulldog because he had about 40 gallons of it on him. But the way the match started, he was really showing off his athleticism here. For a power guy, he was really showing off some athletic moves here. And these two, I thought, put on a pretty good match, and we haven't really had anything great from the British Bulldog recently, so I think it was pretty nice to see.
Yeah.
And all of this confusion with the manager situation, like Jim Cornette and Sonny arguing over these guys. I'm kind of interested to see where they're going. You got Clarence Mason involved, like who's going to manage who. I think it's kind of a nice fresh start to see like what are they doing with the managers.
I'm going to play off of what you were just saying about the Bulldog there, coming off athletic. And there was just something I noticed about the Bulldog in this match, that he doesn't seem quite as bulky as he was about a year ago. I think he's either not hitting the cycles of steroids or whatever, but I think it's for the better. I think it has made him a little bit able to move a little bit better in the ring, because he's not quite as bulky anymore. So I thought it was interesting you pointed that out, because that's something I thought of seeing him work here tonight as well. At the very beginning of this match, they come in and tell us that Mankind is going to be taking on Shawn Michaels at the next pay-per-view. And I don't know if you guys are aware of what a pivotal match this is for Shawn Michaels. I remember this match very well, and I am definitely looking forward to this. When it started, I thought these two guys looked amazing together, and it's not a huge shocker. They've probably wrestled each other a million times, being in the same family, at least by marriage. And at times, it maybe came off of as a bit choreographed, but it was perfectly timed, so it looked excellent. There was a point where the Bulldog had Owen in a choke slam, and Joe, this is more of a question for you than it is Bartlett, because Bartlett, you were never really a big football fan. But during that point, over Davey Boy's shoulder, did you happen to catch the guy coming down the stairs in the Cordell Stewart Steelers jersey?
Yeah, I did. And they're in Wheeling, which is not far from Pittsburgh.
Not far, so it was understandable, but I got a hell of a chuckle out of that.
Slash.
Yes, Slash. I enjoyed the work between these two guys. It was fantastic. But then the distractions started. First Sonny came down. We focus on her. Then Jim Cornette goes on split screen. He's telling us about Yokozuna. And it's a real shame. Even the ending was just more of Sonny. It's like every match is a mind puzzle to figure out how can we fit Sonny into this match. This was another example of that. And the match suffered because of it. And it's a shame, because the ring work was excellent between two of the greats of this time period. But we again decided that we are going to focus more on out-of-the-ring antics than we are on the great ring work that's happening. That's a bit of a disappointment, but I do agree with you, Joe. I enjoyed when I could focus on the match. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and this is another one of those examples where it's easy to start to see how that whole sports entertainment as opposed to wrestling thing took more serious root in the WWF during this time. It's that entertainment thing that gets the focus here as opposed to the wrestling. Best damn soap opera on TV.
That's what they say.
Yeah. Another sexual harassment storyline for Davey Boy Smith here.
I missed my cycle.
Since the last one went so well.
Well, Sonny's diatribe is going to continue in the background there as we move on to take a look at the history of Farouk and Ahmed Johnson. We get clips from Ahmed's interview with Kevin Kelly. Wasn't any really new information there, but we come back to ringside with Sonny still bitching and complaining. More importantly, though, Mark Henry is there signing autographs to the people in Gold Circle seating. Vader will be coming out for the next match, and Vader takes a moment to flex at Mark Henry, who is not intimidated there. And we're going to be moving on here, but just very briefly, Joe, first, please, what did you have on anything, any thoughts on Ahmed, but also this brief Vader-Mark Henry interaction?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the Ahmed interview. It's just a replay, so not much there. But with Mark Henry, Mark Henry is one of these guys. This is almost like one of the first times that they've really pushed a guy who was, I guess, outside of wrestling. Like he's not coming from AWA or WCW or, some other wrestling organization. He's getting a push as a complete outsider. From what I read or heard, he was the first WWF guy to get a guaranteed contract, too. So,
sure, some guys backstage weren't happy about that.
Or at least one of the first ones. So, yeah, they're really strapping the rocket ship to him already. So, we'll see what happens.
This was just a recap with Ahmed Johnson, but we did get to see that loosely draped red robe again. So we did have that. But for me, mostly the exciting part was seeing Mark Henry here and the way he just kind of laughs off Vader's shit talking and tells him to basically fuck off.
Yeah, which is just, I don't know, like it feels so wrong, kind of, that anybody, like really they shouldn't have had these two cross paths, because what's Mark Henry going to do anytime soon? Nothing. All that can happen here is Vader can look weak and ignore the guy telling him to fuck off.
Mm-hmm. He was laughing at him.
Yeah, I mean, we could have at least had like a little pushing or like a little bit of a pull apart or something here, but it just wasn't a very good look for Vader, I guess. Great look for Mark Henry.
Yeah.
Not so much for Vader. Well, gentlemen, we will go now into our next match. Vader with Jim Cornette defeats Freddie Joe Floyd by pinfall in 4 minutes and 35 seconds. And Freddie Joe Floyd is our jobber of the week. Take it, Ryan.
Thank you, Jason. Freddie Joe Floyd is this week's jobber. Freddie Joe Floyd was born Tracy Smothers on September 2nd, 1962 in Evansville, Indiana. He was trained by Stephen Kern and Jerry Jarrett and used the ring names Jason the Terrible, Shaquille Ali.
What?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Tracy Smothers and, of course, Freddie Joe Floyd. Smothers made his in-ring debut for Pro Wrestling USA on September 18th, 1984 in Memphis, Tennessee. He teamed with Keith Eric, losing to the Road Warriors. At the same event, he also teamed against Dory Funk and Harley Race, losing as well. So, just to let you know, Skip, here's a good example of a wrestler doing a double jobber job at one event.
Oh my God.
So just so you know, it can happen if you ever want to be a real jobber.
Just leave him laying in the middle of the ring for the next one.
Tracy's career was long and decorated, holding 26 different titles throughout his career, with a few of them being multiple times. However, with most jobbers, I'm going to try and focus mostly on his time with the WWF. Smothers spent most of the 80s bouncing between just about every Southern wrestling promotion in existence, before landing in New Japan Pro Wrestling in 1988. Where he would stay until 1990. He returned to the States in 1990 for a 2-year run with WCW with tag team partner Steve Armstrong, first being introduced as the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys, later shortened to the Southern Boys. In 92, Tracy joined ECW, where he began working more singles matches, staying with ECW until 1995 before returning to the indie circuit for a couple more years. Then, in 1996, Tracy Smothers joined the WWF. As I stated before, his Freddie Joe Floyd gimmick was made solely as a rib on the WWF front office officials, the Briscoe brothers. So, pretty shitty way to start off your career in the WWF. But he made his debut on June 29th, 1996 on an episode of WWF Superstars, defeating Justin Hawk Bradshaw. That's something new for one of our jobbers, debuting, actually winning a match. He would actually win his next couple matches as well. A match against Uncle Zebekiah, then a tag team match with tag team partner Savio Vega over Bradshaw and Uncle Zeb. However, starting with this squash match against Vader, it would become clear that Smothers was starting to get himself into jobber territory, losing to Stone Cold and Crush over the next month. After that, Smothers was used mainly as house show enhancement talent for the remainder of his time at the WWF. His final WWF match came on June 2nd, 1997 in Huntsville, West Virginia, where he defeated TL Hopper. So again, unique. He won on his way in and on his way out. In 97, Tracy joined ECW again, and despite not having a drop of Italian blood, joined the FBI, or the full-blooded Italians. Smothers, being a stereotypical Southern wrestler, was billed being from Nashville, Italy. And he would become an ECW regular with the FBI until his departure in 1999. After leaving ECW, Smothers again started bouncing around over a dozen different indie promotions, holding titles at many of them, and some of them just wrestling for a match or two. Most notably, and this is solely from a comic point of view, with Gigolo Championship Wrestling between the years of 2007 and 2015. For anyone not familiar, Juggalo Wrestling. This is a promotion ran and owned by the two members of Insane Clown Posse, Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope.
Whoop, whoop.
His final match was for the Heroes and Legends Wrestling promotion on September 27th, 2019, where he dropped his HLW championship belt to Drew Skills. In December of 2019, Tracy disclosed via his Facebook account that he was diagnosed with lymphoma after a visit with a doctor a month prior. He stated, however, it was not terminal. Despite this, Smothers died from his illness on October 28, 2020 at the age of 58. Tracy Smothers' career record is 1,061 wins, 991 losses, and 71 draws. Although his record and title history would say otherwise, his time at the WWF was definitely treated as that of a jobber.
All right. Thank you for that, Ryan. Always good to hear about somebody like this that has been able to touch so many different promotions and just has so many different kinds of memories attached to him, even though in this particular case, it's more of a jobber-esque memory.
If anyone wants to go out there and search his non-WWF time, you will find, as I stated, a very decorated career and a ton of information about the guy.
Yeah, I was always more of a fan of his from his ECW time with the FBI, him and Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke. Again, thank you for that. Let's get back to this. I don't even know if you want to call it a match. We start this match by going to commercial, so that was a good indicator of where things would go. When we come back, Vader is in control of Freddie Joe Floyd, and we get more fake static on our screens. Jim Ross starts to blame The Undertaker for influencing the strange happenings. And before you know it, this match is over. A significant chunk of that match time was taken up in the commercial break, and as Vader hit 2 Vader bombs on Freddie Joe Floyd, I was starting to wonder here if any of the matches going on in our episode were going to get focused tonight. Between the static and the commercial and Cornette yelling on commentary, which I forgot to mention, Cornette joined commentary on this, so we got a 4-man booth for this match. Between that, the commentary, it was all I could do to type out these notes before the match was over. I mean, it just felt like I was trying to get into it, and then it was done. Ryan, were you able to get maybe some more out of this match than I did?
Probably not much more. I decided Freddie Joe Floyd was the jobber the moment they cut to a commercial as the match started. I said, well, clearly this guy's the biggest jobber of the night.
He didn't get any kind of entrance or notification or nothing.
No introduction, no nothing. Just match starts, now let's go to commercial. And we come back and Vader wins. I mean, that was the entire match. The only thing that I really have to point out is a question. And Joe, this is something you brought up a few weeks ago or maybe a month ago at this point, but where were these squash matches for Vader a couple months ago when we needed them?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I noted that, I guess this was an okay way to help kind of build Vader back up, but like too little too late,
Right. Yeah.
And he's not going to get another title shot, so who cares? Like, what's the point in building him up again? I don't know. It's crazy. Yeah, Freddie Joe Floyd, he really got jobbed out here. He's trying to be one of the comical type jobbers, kind of flailing around a little bit. He's not very good at it. And this Undertaker static stuff is actually kind of pissing me off at this point. So looking forward to the next segment.
It's interesting because both of you have said you don't like it. And to me, I don't know. Unlike a split screen or focusing on someone else, it doesn't take as much focus off of the match. So it doesn't bother me a ton, but I can see what you mean.
Yeah.
For me, it's just how blatantly fake it is.
Yeah, there's that.
Right. The way they're not like selling it very well.
Yeah.
Like it almost feels like to me it would have been more effective to have like, I don't know, the guys at the announce table, like looking at the camera, the guy, the person that carries the camera on his shoulder and like maybe smacking their monitors and like talking to us, the viewer, and being like, we've been having trouble seeing what's going on. There's static on our screens. Or
because how do they already know it's the Undertaker?
Yeah.
Without there being, the Undertaker logo or something coming up in the static, why are they already saying, well, this must be the Undertaker?
Because they have Vince McMahon screaming.
Yeah.
Say the Undertaker, damn it. Say it one more time.
I just wish they didn't show their hand as much and then allowed the segment later to speak for itself. But yeah.
It's got to be Kane.
Well, we'll go away from that, and we need to pitch the Coliseum home video SummerSlam Encore here real quick. But that's just a formality as we come back to the ring for an interview. It's Jim Ross with the microphone, and he is there introducing Paul Bearer and Mankind. Jim really leans into describing the Boiler Room Brawl. We get grainy black and white crime scene photos from the match. But the real question for Paul Bearer is why he has destroyed The Undertaker's legacy. And I find that very ironic considering at the time of this recording, we're coming off of WrestleMania weekend where The Undertaker was inducted into the Hall of Fame. So it's a miracle that he survived Paul Bearer destroying his legacy here. Of course, as they're talking about The Undertaker's legacy, the lights flicker. We get static on the screen, both of which are indicative of The Undertaker and the fact that Mankind has the power now, whatever that might mean. They're still trying to tie these supernatural events kind of into the power of the urn. Some of the commentary wants to suggest that it's The Undertaker that's causing all of these happenings. Some of the commentary suggests that it's the depravity of Mankind because now Mankind has the urn, so now he's the powerful one and it's his insanity that's causing shit to happen. And this is getting a little convoluted for my personal tastes, but anyway, between Paul Bearer and Mankind here, we get some great promos, and Mankind lets us know that he's going to be taking on Shawn Michaels for the title at the next pay-per-view. I loved Paul Bearer saying, Undertaker's gone. Undertaker has passed away. And the bell tolling to answer that statement was great timing. The crowd pop was infectious. And then the Druids are back, carrying out what looks like The Undertaker in that same way that they carried him out of SummerSlam. There's a lot of talk about how The Undertaker is just a decaying corpse now, with vermin and maggots and worms eating his flesh. And of course, The Undertaker is not, in fact, decaying, because he's there to do a sit-up after the Druids lay him down on the ground. It was a classic Undertaker segment as we break for commercial and come back to a scene of a fire raging by a lakeside and someone advising us not to believe our eyes because we might not see what we think we see. The Stalker is on his way to the WWF to pursue the superstars of the WWF, and the pursuit will be deadly. The implication here being that he's going to hunt and murder WWF superstars. I look forward to seeing how that turns out. And this is where this segment ends. Ryan, please, what did you think of the interview with Paul Bearer, Mankind, The Undertaker, and then the Stalker afterwards?
You know, the interview with Paul Bearer, Mankind, and ultimately Undertaker, it took up quite a bit of time, but I thought it did a really good job of telling this story even further. Paul Bearer and Mankind both cut a fantastic promo at the beginning here. And then we get the Undertaker, you know, he gets brought down, dropped off. And when he sat up, my Lord, did this arena erupt. I mean, he got one hell of a fucking cheer. I thought it all kind of worked here. I mean, this was all stuff that interested me, especially when I was younger. I remember loving this storyline, and to be honest, watching it again, I kind of, I could understand why. I mean, as an older person, obviously it could come off as a little bit cheesy at times and not believable, but if you want to put yourself in the mindset of just following a story, they're doing a hell of a job of telling that, especially when they start carrying down the Undertaker's body and the way that Paul Bearer just starts talking about, this is the wake for the Undertaker. He's dead. It felt like something I have not ever seen up until this point in wrestling, and almost took the morbid element of this to a level that maybe wouldn't have been comfortable for USA, you know, the way they started talking about this. So I thought that this was a really good segment and definitely signs of the WWF transitioning into these longer stories, because, I mean, if you think about it, the setup for the Undertaker's return, which is all of one night here, was almost the entire episode building up the Undertaker, which is something kind of unique. Up until this point, we haven't seen a whole lot of episodes that were solely for building up one babyface. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Then Barry Windham, the Stalker. I mean, kind of a odd vignette. All I got from it was that he likes camping, and I enjoy camping as well, so I can sympathize with him on that.
For the wake, I'll call it the wake, the Undertaker wake. This is the first show in Wheeling, so this is the live portion of that. I think they should have started with this. They should have started the live show with this, because we just saw SummerSlam, and what's the biggest question we have is why, Paul, why?
Yeah.
Why would you do this to The Undertaker? So this would have been a great Fallout episode start. It didn't happen, but I still enjoyed this. I thought that Paul Bearer was excellent here. I usually don't get grossed out by things that people say on wrestling shows, but he was talking about the worms and the maggots are eating his flesh, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
One thing I want to point out, it doesn't really have to do with The Undertaker at all, was Mankind talking about Shawn Michaels. I thought he cut a great promo on Shawn Michaels. He's saying he wants to put Shawn in the hospital. Okay, so like maybe this is something they should have done with Vader. Like maybe they should have done a stretcher job with Shawn Michaels before the Vader match, you know, to really put that monster element into it. So if Mankind wants to put Shawn Michaels in the hospital in September, then I'm looking forward to what's going to happen, you know, on the next 2 or 3 episodes of Raw. The Stalker, to me, is one of those things that, you know how they came up with this, is Barry Windham, I guess, was talking to Vince about stalking animals on his ranch or his farm or whatever. So Vince said, all right, that's a great idea, the Stalker.
That sounds believable.
So I don't know. It's like one of those things that it could be cool, you know, the concept of it, but like they're calling him the Stalker, which is the most generic name you can have. And then they say his fucking name, Barry Windham. So it just has no chance of working, I don't think.
There was something in Mankind's promo that I forgot to point out. It was when he was talking about how his body is still racked with pain from the boiler room, and he loves it. And, you know, just the way he delivered it, and knowing Mick Foley, I kind of believe that he did. It was believable that he enjoyed the pain of the boiler room. Another example of the excellent job Mick Foley does in this Mankind character.
Yeah.
Well, I've got good news for Mankind. He's about to be stalked and killed by the Stalker at some point here eventually.
I just can't get over it. You're calling a guy a stalker, but yet Hey guys, the Stalker's Barry Windham, so fuck it all, you know?
I wear my sunglasses at night.
There's no mystery behind it at all.
At this point, they might as well have him in the bushes underneath the window of like a co-ed sorority house or something.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just everybody keep your head on a swivel. Keep looking over your shoulder. You never know when the Stalker might be coming up behind you. We're going to go now into our next match. Goldust with Marlena defeats Stone Cold Steve Austin, Psycho Sid, and Savio Vega in a 4-man battle royale in 8 minutes and 55 seconds to win the title match at Raw Championship Friday, which is what our next episode after this one is going to be. So, in the match here, showing up for a Psycho Sid match must be like a Gallagher show. The first couple rows need to wear ponchos because every time he shakes his head, he sprays baby oil in a 6-foot radius. Sid was immediately eliminated by Austin, Vega, and Goldust, triple teaming him. But Sid came back in to give everyone slams all around, and that looked good. As things kicked off in earnest, Goldust and Austin double-teamed Vega until Austin backstabbed Goldust, and I still just can't get over how fast Austin is here. After the backstab while he's working on Goldust, that was just smooth and swift. I've mentioned it a couple times in the past, and I'm still just wondering if maybe I'm misremembering things or not, because goddamn, he moves in the ring. But then we break to commercial. It's the Stridex Slam of the Week, and the Stridex Slam of the Week just so happens to be that nearly botched Shooting Star Press. Excuse me, it's called the Wild Thing in this case, from Mark Marrow at SummerSlam. I don't know why anyone wants to keep putting that on our screens.
Slow motion from multiple angles.
Yeah. Back in the match, things are about what you would expect from a three-way match. Too many things going on to tell an effective story. But Savio putting Austin out was interesting, and it worked really well, I thought, the way that they did it here. Savio started moving a little slow, though, after that. He didn't have much oomph on the attempted whip to the ropes of Goldust. And then, in a nice little twist, Goldust just barely wins this with a reversal over the ropes. This wasn't as bad as most battle royales are, generally speaking. You know, the action was decent in spots, but in a lot of ways, this felt just as disjointed and distracted as the rest of this episode has so far. Joe, you've usually got a more positive outlook on this kind of match, so I think I'd like to hear what you have to say first, please.
Yeah, well, to start out with, the negative piece of it for me was I forgot why this match was happening until they told us it's just some fucking random booking idea they came up with, which I don't know, I guess it's fine. But I also want to say that, you know, we like Stone Cold Steve Austin here in 1996, but even so, like, who would have predicted that 19 years after his, quote, last match, that he would have the wrestling world on fire in 2022? So what a weekend for him.
Yeah.
Just crazy to think that after, you know, watching this, because he's great, but he's not really to that level yet. I thought this was okay. I think that Sid eliminating everybody, Sid getting eliminated and then choke slamming everyone. I mean, I don't know. I could nitpick that, but I don't know. It's fine. It makes sense that they would go after the biggest guy and get rid of him. Jim Ross tells us that Stone Cold is a man who wants Bret Hart in the ring. Did I miss something? Have they said this before? I don't know.
I feel like we have got a word or two from Steve Austin directed towards Bret Hart.
Yeah.
Maybe nothing serious, but I think there has been a couple words.
I mean, either way, I guess Jim Ross is kind of setting the table for us for that, for that little feud. So that's nice. All three guys that were left, Stone Cold, Savio, and Goldust, they did the almost getting thrown out of the ring thing, which was pretty cool. Savio and Goldust being the final two, you know, I'm okay with that. But Goldust looked a little bit exhausted when he was in there with Savio for some reason. I'm not sure if that was on purpose or if he really was out of gas. I don't know. But I'm interested to see what Goldust can do with Shawn Michaels. I mean, that's something to look forward to. I think Goldust has been a little bit flat since he lost his Intercontinental title at King of the Ring. So I think this will be a good spark for him.
Right out of the gate, Sid gets eliminated immediately, and he comes back in and he choke slams every remaining opponent in it. So I thought that was a good way to make sure Sid isn't in the ring too long.
Yeah.
But also make him look kind of strong.
Yeah, very, very protective.
Right. So I thought that was decent. And as much as I always shit talk the battle royales, when you immediately start out with it basically being a 3-way match, it has the potential to be better, especially with the remaining guys that were in the ring. And for the most part, I thought that was true. It's still a match, though, where the rules are to throw your guy over the top rope. And unfortunately, that is going to hinder the match. But as it goes along, there were some decent moves. I thought Goldust landing that great superplex on Austin off the top rope, that looked good. But I was kind of surprised how early Austin got eliminated from Savio Vega tossing him out. I don't know if either of you noticed this, but was Kevin Kelly making fun of Vince McMahon?
What did he say?
They go back and they show a replay of Stone Cold being eliminated. And Kevin Kelly says, "Let's take a look again at this great maneuver that eliminated Stone Cold." And he added the sarcastic maneuver that I did to the sentence when I said it. So I think he was making fun of Vince McMahon's delivery. Way to go, Kevin Kelly, the highlight of this match. Goldust ultimately wins, and I agree. I'm looking forward to a Goldust Shawn Michaels match. I think they could probably do something decent together. And to be honest, this is probably one of the better Battle Royale matches that I've seen. However, it still had the over-the-top bullshit rule that kept it from being anything great.
Yeah, I completely agree. It did its job of setting up that match, because how else were we going to get to Goldust versus Shawn Michaels for a championship match? We needed to get Shawn on the card there for somehow, and not really many other people in the picture here now that he's gotten rid of Vader. So, it did a good job of that.
They didn't say this, but the next Raw is going to be that Friday special.
Yeah.
So I almost wonder if they want to put Shawn Michaels versus Goldust on there so that people will tune in again, because they're going to be off for a couple weeks because of the U.S. Open.
And it's going to be on a different day.
Yeah. So I wonder if they're kind of doing that just to, hey, don't forget about us. Like, we're still here, even though we haven't been on in a couple weeks. Here's a great match for you.
To make you forget about Andre Agassi, or I think he's probably still playing then, right?
Possibly, yeah. Pete Sampras.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we move it along, we pitch the SummerSlam Encore again. And after that, we go backstage to James E. Cornette to talk about what's going to happen to Shawn Michaels. Apparently, Yokozuna is back with Cornette again, and we don't really get clarification with that. We're going to just pretend like all that other stuff never happened, I guess.
It's what we do best.
Well, I'm pretty sure where they left it is that Yokozuna needed to go rethink his life.
He had to find himself. He had to find himself.
He had to find himself, and apparently the answers that he was looking for is that he never should have left James E. Cornette.
After being a babyface for a week, he decided that he had to go back under Jim Cornette.
A babyface for a week and getting taken out on a forklift. My goodness.
When he ultimately called it quits was after he lost his balance trying to do the bonsai drop.
That is true. He slipped on the rope, yeah.
And then decided James E. Cornette could keep him from slipping off the ropes.
Well, we move along pretty quickly from there, but I had to pause and ask you both, what do you think about the fact that we are just completely ignoring the previous story between Yoko and Cornette? Not just that, but also just the simple fact that Yokozuna is going to be back on our screens. Joe, please, why don't you take that first?
We're not talking about the match yet, but it's non-title. But why is Yokozuna getting this match? He was just in a fucking dark match yesterday. So I don't understand why he's getting this, and where the fuck is Jim Cornette? Like Jim Cornette doesn't come down with him, so it's even more confusing. Like, is Jim Cornette really with him? Is Yoko maybe swerving Cornette? It's just very strange.
Yeah, I agree. His return here and the timing of it is strange. The last we saw him, he was going to find himself after becoming a babyface extremely briefly, as we just covered. And now he's back with Jim Cornette. And the last time he left was because I'm assuming he had to find himself because he was too out of shape to do the bonsai drop. Then they show us footage from the free-for-all with Stone Cold, and we find out that again, when he went to go do the bonsai drop, this time he broke the entire fucking ring with his weight. Is he going to go find himself again? Or did he find himself, and by finding himself, that was, I need an extra 50 pounds? I don't get it.
Yeah, at some point here, Jim Ross does say that he thinks that Yoko is getting close to pushing 700. Well, as I said, we move along quickly into our final match of the night. Shawn Michaels with Jose Lothario defeats Yokozuna by pinfall in 6 minutes and 2 seconds. My very first note, Yoko was looking enormous here. And of course, Shawn Michaels' entrance was a spectacle of stripping and pyro and camera angles and lighting. But once the match gets going, this wasn't looking too bad. Quick question, did you guys notice, and do you know why Yoko had a little smiley face sharpied on his forearm?
I did not notice it, nor do I know why.
Whenever he was laying in the corner there with his arms up, somebody had drawn a smiley face on his forearm. And here, right after that, we get another commercial break. This was really poorly timed because it was just as Cornette was coming out. And whenever we come back, Cornette was beating up Jose Lothario.
Kind of.
Because we need to keep that angle going. Yoko body slamming Michaels looked great, but Yoko sucking wind as a result didn't. He got blown up performing a fucking body slam. But the reversal of the sweet chin music into a Samoan drop did look good, and so did the finish. Michaels dodges a leg drop, counters with a properly applied sweet chin music to get the pin and the 3 count to close out our show, and we fade to black. We have said in the past that Shawn Michaels and Yoko work well together, and that if there was ever anybody out there that could pull a good match out of Yoko, it has to be a small handful, and one of that small handful is Shawn Michaels. I tend to think that this match proved it. Ryan, what did you think of this match and the way that Raw ended tonight?
Yeah, I agree in that this is probably the best that someone is going to get out of Yokozuna at this time. Obviously, at pushing 700 pounds, this is not going to be a barn burner. But I thought the guys did a good job in the ring with working with what they had. The only spot that was a little bit I laughed at was it was extremely cartoonish, where Michaels started lining up and just punching Yokozuna time and time again. And then Yoko starts reeling and reeling and reeling and reeling until finally he bounces down on his giant ass. It was comical enough that it worked. And the worst part of this match was Cornette attacking Jose Lothario because it looked terrible from both guys. Jose couldn't sell it, and Cornette looked terrible throwing these punches. I wish they just would have maybe said that it happened and not showed any of it, because it looked bad. Yoko's belly-to-belly suplex on Shawn. Whew! It sounded and looked amazing. He got his full girth behind that one. I would agree, Yoko was definitely starting to suck wind here, but Michaels then lands the sweet chin music and we get the victory. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there is anyone right now that could have got a better match out of Yoko. I'm not saying it was, anything to write home about, but I was surprised, I guess not surprised, because of Shawn Michaels being involved, but it was nice to see.
They showed the free-for-all clip of Yoko breaking the ring the day before this. And then I looked at the Peacock player and saw there's 4 minutes left on this show. So I already hate this. I hate it going into it. And then we find out that this was really just something to set up this Jim Cornette versus Jose Lothario thing and keep that going, which absolutely nobody cares about. Nobody cares about it. And it's involving your champion, your WWF champion. Like, it doesn't need this sideshow bullshit. And when I say nobody cares about it, that includes Shawn Michaels, because he goes and checks on Jose for like 15 seconds and then just continued wrestling in the match.
Well, Cornette never actually landed a hit, so he had nothing to worry about.
And then Shawn wins the match, and Shawn must pose while Jose is dying outside the ring.
He's old anyway.
It made me think of Jim Cornette always, flipping out modern day about Shawn Michaels not, treating Jose like shit when he came in. It's like, maybe Shawn Michaels never wanted Jose there to begin with, and he's fucking been there for way too long already.
Yeah, he's overstayed his welcome by months at this point.
Yeah, and like, I don't mean to sound disrespectful to a wrestling legend, but like, it's not really adding anything. And it's just not necessary for your world champion, the most charismatic person on the planet, according to Vince McMahon. Why do you have him with this guy? Doesn't make sense. To me, this was the drizzling shits, and it did not need to be squeezed into this episode.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic point. You've got the most charismatic man, and then you've got the charisma black hole that is Jose Lothario. He just sucks any charisma possible out of the fucking room.
They were going for the whole Mickey Rocky thing, but like, they did that for the Iron Man match, and it was good. And then it should have ended. It should have ended there.
Joe, whenever you were talking about it just now, it kind of clicked in my head that maybe this is like a similar situation that they had with Captain Lou Albano in the early days of us doing the podcast here. I forget where we heard it, but one of the, I do believe it was either Pritchard or JR. They talked about how it was almost like a rib. Captain Lou Albano would show up looking for work, and they would kind of just pass him off all the time. But eventually they decided to give him a night of work one time, and then he just stuck around and was there forever somehow afterwards.
They could have had Vader bomb Jose and send him to the hospital. There's the end of Jose. He's gone. Yeah. Shawn wants revenge.
Yeah. Make it like Rocky 3.
Yeah, not Jim Cornette. He's not a wrestler, and nobody cares about it.
Well, as I said, that was the end of the episode, so let's take it on over now to highlights and lowlights. Joe, please, why don't you go first?
This was a fairly strong episode of Raw. I think for my highlight, I'm gonna go with the Owen Hart British Bulldog match, just because it was a pleasant surprise to me. I really enjoyed the Mankind and Paul Bearer stuff, but I expected that to be good. For my low light, I'm just going to go with what we just talked about, the Jim Cornette, Jose Lothario stuff, because, we're probably going to get some sort of wrestling match at some point with these two, and who the fuck wants to see that?
My highlight is, I'm going to go with the Undertaker, Paul Bearer, Mankind segment. I thought they did a great job with this. A excellent way to further this storyline with all three involved here. I'm interested, and the crowd is too. So that was my highlight. My low light, as much as I enjoyed the action between Owen Hart and Bulldog, my low light is the ignoring of the match and the way that they just refused to focus on these two superstars wrestling each other and having a great match. That was my low light.
Yeah, I come a little close to you in my lowlights. I went with, because Joe, as you said, this overall was a fairly strong episode, so I had to end up going with just the production, timing, the storytelling. I know they don't do live all that often, but if they're going to be doing, you would think that they would start to get better at doing live, considering they have Nitro as a competitor now. but just with their production and storytelling, just all over the place, to the point of being distracting. Poorly timed commercials, too many things outside of the ring going on that, it took it away from the actual matches. My highlight, though, I'm going to differ from both of you. I went with Shawn and Yoko. It was good to get glimpses of how good Yoko could be when he's not blown up. And fortunately, like I said earlier, fortunately, Shawn Michaels is one of that small handful of people that can have a great match with Yokozuna. And, I tried to make it clear whenever I said that earlier, like, I was surprised that we had Yokozuna on our screens here. And I don't know how many more times we're going to get that. And if I can get a match that's like this, Shawn and Yoko, somebody else and Yoko, where we just get a couple little glimpses before he's finally done, I think I could be happy with that and have a better job of remembering him fondly, because so far what we've seen, doing this podcast hasn't really stacked up with the way that I remember him from my childhood. And I don't want that to be the last thing that we see of him. So I will try to remain an optimist there. Joseph, do you happen to have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around August 19th, 1996 for us?
Yeah, just a couple quick notes from the Wrestling Observer. Dave Meltzer seemed to enjoy this live Raw show. He said it was the best Raw show in a long time, so he really enjoyed the show. He noted that fans were chanting Bulldog during the Bulldog and little Sunny segment there. I guess the fans were maybe anticipating a babyface turn here tonight, but that's not what we saw, so interested to see where that's going to go. Dave Meltzer also says he commented on the Stalker gimmick. Ryan, during your Jobber of the Week, you mentioned that Tracy Smothers was trained by Steve Kern, who was Skinner, if you guys remember Skinner.
Oh, yeah.
Dave Meltzer seems to think that the Stalker gimmick looks too much like the Skinner character that we saw a few years before this. He also notes that Stone Cold Steve Austin seems to be getting over as a babyface. And last note is that there was a wrestler named Flex Kavana who had a dark match at this event. And we know that Flex Kavana will become The Rock at some point.
Okay.
Or Rocky Maivia soon.
Yeah, he is. He's having matches, so that is good to hear.
Very exciting.
And that is all.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Help me out on this one. Rocky debuts at Survivor Series?
Yeah.
So we're only a couple months away from that then.
Yeah, he's in developmental, and he was working matches with Jerry Lawler's promotion before Survivor Series. So, yeah.
All right, that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review. Let your friends know how much cooler they would be if they became Rawheads like you and me. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw Championship Friday, which aired on September 6th, 1996, with matches featuring Mark Marrow, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.